Let's get into it. 1, 2, 3. Just give me some more. Clap your hands. Give me some more. Just give me some more.
Why, hello, and welcome to My Whiskey Den, your favorite public access whiskey review show where craft whiskey is king. We are a proud part of the Bar Cart Co-op with other fine shows like Bourbon Turntable, where they blend the love of music with the love of whiskey, and Distillers Talk, where Alan Bishop and Christy Atkins sit down and go a little bit deeper than what we do on this show into the actual distillation process. And other processes as well, too. And also, they have the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute, where you can learn about the distilling industry, maybe what you could be doing at home, maybe what you shouldn't be doing at home. That's all your own option. I got nothing to say about that. But I want to thank everyone in the chat for being here nice and early tonight. We really appreciate that. And I want to thank our good friend Fred for being here this evening, because it is Brandy month, and I was awaiting this lovely release for quite a long time, and I really enjoy it. But thank you for being here, Fred. Sorry, I got excited. I started gushing about stuff before I even let you say anything.
I love the fact that you showed the bottle. Thank you very much. I'm very, very honored once again to be in your den.
Mike, can you make my screen a titch bigger, and we'll make this a little.
Can I make that? Okay, yeah. Hold on. There you go.
I got a little light glare there, but I would say, and I'll bring this up later, but it is not an aggressive label. As I was going to say, it is a very relaxed, kind of inviting label compared to some other ones. So
True.
We'll get into that in a minute. But how have you been lately?
I've been well. Things are going well. We're looking at Brandy time of the year. We're getting into that, where people in Wisconsin in particular are leaning in harder than they normally lean in to Brandy. It's not like we go light on Brandy. We just go heavier some months. So it gets cold and we dial it up a little bit for Brandy. So that's it's a big thing for us. This is the first winter season that we're getting in. So it's a big thing for us to have this first one under our belt and to start making a little noise.
It is. Now, you guys opened a few years ago, and was this something that was in the works from the beginning, or was a Brandy something you guys wanted to do right away and started working on, or was that kind of progressed into it?
That was very much not something. Matter of fact, we were probably saying 4+ years ago that we didn't really have any intention of putting out a Brandy. It just didn't seem feasible or what we were impassioned by at that time. And then all of a sudden COVID hit and our relationships changed, and some other parts of the backstory in our business and the family businesses that the Mosses have, everything changed. And it got into, hey, we should really kind of dig down a little bit. It also doesn't help that we're back in the backside of a development. When people come there, the first thing they see is somebody else's winery, and then they drive through grapevines to get to our place. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a constant story. So I think at some point we all just said, you know what, this might be something we ought to pay attention to.
Well, and I was surprised by that, because I know you guys had Limousine Rye, and I was going to say, with a list of other things you guys have come out with, I thought this might have been something that was right away, like, we'll head into it. But like we were saying, it's a tough market to work your way into at a price point in Wisconsin.
Yep, Wisconsin's very much a price point Brandy market. It is, and I used to say forever when I even wasn't in the industry that, you know, we're a Brandy old-fashioned state, okay? Until I kind of realized, you know, that's generally true, but by and large, we're a Korbel old-fashioned state. And that's probably deep, true, and honest. So it's, if you're going to play in that market, you have to recognize the industry leader, and they do what they do. They do it well, and they have a huge market share. So for us to play in that, we have to recognize all the great things that they brought to the state of Wisconsin. And one of the things that they brought was a very accessible price point, so that a Brandy Old Fashioned on a Friday night at a fish fry, or having prime rib on a Saturday, because Mike, those are two state laws in the state of Wisconsin. You have the Friday fish fry and everybody has to eat it. And then you have the Saturday prime rib. And Sunday, if you're lucky, the other one is roasted chicken or broasted chicken on the Sundays. So with that, it was that notion of, we've got an industry leader that has allowed that drink. One of the reasons I think that drink is so big is because it's an accessible price point. It also plays into the Wisconsin palate, which tends to drink and eat pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask you a question, because I'll admit I've never had Korbel. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So are you I know you're not going to try to beat Korbel at their own game. And you said before, if you guys can just take a little bit of their share, I mean, that's fantastic. But flavor wise, was Korbel or somebody else a target, or was the Wisconsin palate a target?
I think by and large, Korbel was a recognized industry leader and less of a target. And I think our target was Wisconsin palates. And how can we put something at a price point that is a few dollars north of that, keep the money in the state of Wisconsin as much as possible, and then really build a bottle that's really close in price, but awesome in taste, and just fleshes out. And for those of us that have been cocktailers and bar folks for a long time, that's kind of the backstory of most of the people at the Goat is, their ability to sling drinks, and to look at what that bottle does in drinks as well as neat. And Wisconsinites just do not drink a lot of brandy neat. It's just not what we do. Not a lot of brandy over ice is going into glasses and across bars. So looking at that and how we drink, and then the price point, it might be the most, you could probably even argue that it's probably more price sensitive than even vodka in a lot of cases.
I would agree with that. I was going to, especially since there's a lot of price that's, it's brandy that's below that is I would say is kind of questionable, as if it's with the extra flavoring that can be added sometimes, kind of proceeds below that price point. And then a lot of times once you get above, like, say $20, $25, it jumps to 50-ish. I was going to say there's not a big in between for brandy, from what I've noticed, especially compared to whiskey, where you can hit a mid-range in between some stuff and find some stuff in that range. It almost breaks, and there's like a $25 gap from what I've seen.
That's very true. I mean, you've got a Korbel price point, which is 12 to the high teens for a 750. It's always hard to compare in a lot of cases because bars use liter bottles and we as consumers buy 750s. Or in the case of brandy, we buy handles in Wisconsin. And sometimes, because we've been blessed with two hands in Wisconsin, we buy one for the left and one for the right. But at the same time, there is a big gap. What you're looking at, Patrick, is a gap that is very clearly a gap between daily brandy and what I would consider to be American craft brandy. Okay. And there's just a gap, and it's a mental leap for a lot of people to look at a $35 to a $45 bottle of brandy and say, I'm going to cocktail with that. Okay. For whatever reason, it seems to be that leap into not necessarily cognac, but just high-end brandy for a lot of people. And it just says, that's going to be really hard for me to cocktail with at that price point. So I agree. There's becoming more and more Wisconsin craft brandies that are sitting in that high teens to low 20s. But American craft, I mean, everything is built on scope and scale in the world of capitalism. And if your scope and scale is really small and you're buying at different different points, and your manufacturing costs are completely different than somebody at the size of a Korbel, for example, it's just hard to get it down out of $35. It's not that, I mean, I think what happens sometimes in the consumer's mind is, why is he charging $35? Well, it's because this pot still is only so big, and we touch it a whole lot more, and our automation is a whole lot less, and our scope and scale is way less, and thus our prices are reflective of that. So we just felt blessed when we could get a price to a point that was in people's mindset for a daily drinker.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, Mike. I don't know if you've sipped on it or not. Even though
I have.
You have.
I have a couple times.
Even though you're calling it like a daily drinker, I can see where you're thinking that, but this packs a really nice punch of flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of fruit. There's a lot of aromatics. There's some honey. It's lighter than what I was thinking it was gonna be. Almost like a cotton candy grape in there as well too.
Yep.
If you've ever had that, it like you said, I think you guys did target the sweeter point of the Wisconsin palate, but it's also a lighter. It's not like a darker, deeper brandy where a lot of times you can get kind of almost like you're getting something. I don't want to say like red wine notes, but I was gonna say you can get some of that deeper like plum flavor in it. This did not attack that at all. And from when I first had it, I guess that was a surprise to me. It was very complex, but it was on a different flavor plane than what I was expecting.
And I think a lot of times you get into, particularly in American craft brandy, depending upon what the grapes are that they might be using for that, you get out of that really kind of lighter floral grapey, kind of quality, very, very white grape forward, grape soda, if it were, but then you get into these really deep and complex, particularly if you're in wood aging, you get these deep complex notes that I'm not sure that the major consumer, the main consumer, your average consumer, is looking for something. I mean, they might go to cognac for that. They might go to Armagnac for something that's got a whole different level of depth, complexity, barrel components, darkness, mid notes, kind of that mid palate notes. What I like about that is that we found out of California some of the best grapes to make what we consider to be a brandy that we're very, very, very proud of. But at the same time, it's in the bottle at 86 proof, so it's built to cocktail with. It is really hard to cocktail with something at 80 proof. Your dilution rate brandy's tough to punch through in the typical classic Wisconsin cocktail where you've got a sugary spirit, a very sugar forward spirit in brandy, but you're pouring it over sugar that has been muddled and fruit, which are sugars. And then you're putting your sugary spirit on there, and then you're backfilling it with carbonated sugar. So it's really hard for any spirit to kind of punch through. Okay, and to do that, one of the ways to punch through is to proof it right. And it, again, nobody serves an up old fashioned in the state of Wisconsin. So it's going to be an ice, it's going to have dilution, and that's one of the things that we're very focused on is that it punches through in the cocktail and you can actually taste the brandy.
So will you all be doing? And maybe you can't answer this. Just one expression of brandy, or will you do more than one expression of brandy?
I think right now we're very focused currently. I think we're done saying we won't and we're not interested or we probably won't. I think we're going to hedge our bets going forward and say never's never. And we're very much focused right now on getting this product out into Wisconsinites' hands. When you can be below $20 and then suddenly people should be able to wrap their brain around it. So, me pouring a store sampling somewhere, us making a few cocktails in the front of a liquor store or a grocery store liquor aisle. We just need to get this liquid to people's lips and show them what it can do. And it'll be one more thing that, Wisconsin will be known for that comes from Wisconsin.
So I have a couple questions. First off, is there an official Dancing Goat brandy old fashioned recipe with this brandy?
There is an old-fashioned recipe that is very traditional that we've used before. It's a little more cherry forward. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but really it's a little more cherry forward, and it cuts back on a lot of the sugars. I'll be really honest with our brandy because there's enough sugar in it. It's already a sugary spirit. It's punchy enough. I just use it and I build a regular old fashioned with it, and I just use club soda. At worst, I'll do a modified press with just a very little bit of 7-Up or Sprite. So, you start to look at a bar spoon of amaretto cherry juice or Luxardo cherry juice, and what that can do a little bit to bump up an old fashioned and give it a little more depth and complexity. I think that is what we're really kind of leaning into, is not reinventing this brandy old fashioned, but just putting our spirit in front of it and showing people what it looks like in very traditional kind of builds.
Okay, so going back to several things that you said, and this is my first time having this tonight, and so I wrote down my notes before the show. So the things that I wrote down were on the nose, and this is, now I grew up in Iowa, so not the upper Midwest, but Midwest, so there's some closeness. Right off the nose, Elf Grape Pop, and which I know pop or soda. Okay, there's that. Then a buttered fruit pastry with powdered sugar and vanilla on the nose. But then when I went back in the second time, the Elf Grape Pop it got replaced by grape gum, like Bubblicious or something, something very grape, like, but then the palate on it, I was surprised at how it was creamy and floral. But then Kevin had mentioned pear. I got pear on the palate, and then pepper, and it's just like very soft and pleasant. But after you describing the target and for what Wisconsinites want, I mean, I'm the whole time I'm thinking this just screams Midwest. I mean, this is like dead on. It's like, yeah, I get this 100%. Yeah,
absolutely. And one of the notes on the back of the bottle that Patrick can see is that grape soda note, okay, as a tasty note. And then you look at that caramel and you look at the vanilla, and all the things that you said are notes that we are pushing forward and really looking for. What I love about that is we showed that to numerous high-end liquor stores and very notable liquor stores that people follow in the state of Wisconsin. Just kind of as what we used to, before we were doing single barrels, we'd call it our amuse bouche, as your palate cleanser. And we would, we'd start out with a taste of this brandy that we hadn't even bottled yet, but we were still sitting on, but it was aging in our place. So people are like, oh my God, I will buy that single barrel of brandy. And I did not come here to buy a single barrel of brandy. And it was that notion that people understand this. I think there are points in that drink, and there's points when you're sipping it neat, where it's almost like, if you've ever had frozen grapes that have been rolled in white sugar, there's an element of that comes through very quickly and then is gone. Okay, and then vanilla pumps up and caramels pump up, and that's the wood tannins, and that's some of the stuff that the barrel aging adds. But it's one of those products that it's a little bit foreign for some people. There's a lot of people that are really, really into a very, very easy drinking brandy, so they get a little thrown by those wood notes that come through, those vanillins and whatnot. So I've heard a couple people say, God, that's really a nice spirit, but it's a whiskey drinker's brandy. And I guess at some level you can't fault them, okay? Because it is done the way we do our whiskey. This thing was aged in a rickhouse for a period of time that looks a little bit like the rickhouse on the bottle, because it is the rickhouse on the bottle. But yeah, I mean, so you mentioned the bottle and the label and everything, and we put that out on the shelves, and within the first week I had 2, maybe 3 female liquor store owners who came to me and said, thank you for putting out a label that women will feel comfortable picking up without even asking any questions, and men will understand that it's not just for women. So I dug down a little deeper, and she said, look at all of anything aged in wood. Look at all the brown spirits labels. They're all male Pantones. Everything is male Pantones. It's dark browns, it's blacks, it's cream colors. It might have some red accents, some auburn accents, but it's by and large a male palate. That is a very different stylized floral depiction of our rickhouse in the midst of the breakthrough from winter to spring. So I like that. It's we get ticked on it a little bit, but I really like it. I think it's very different. I think it jumps off the shelf. You see it on the back bar very easily. That bottle is probably not the bottle that we might have gone with in a perfect world, but it is a COVID supply chain bottle. That we just happened to have enough of. So we were able to put that product out when it was ready versus having to wait for bottles to ship. So I think it's odd in some ways, but if you take the time to really describe what we were trying to go for in that label, it makes a lot of sense.
It's very minimalistic and approachable as far as the label goes.
Right.
I mean, wording alone, I mean,
Yep.
pretty much just 3 words on the front. I was going to say it.
It's the first time we put something out under the name Dancing Goat. As a house of brands, it's and that was not taken lightly. I mean, we are so proud of that brandy that we'll lead with our name on that. The words that jump out first, I don't think are brandy on that label. I think you see the words Dancing Goat Distillery and brandy all at one time.
So you mentioned the single barrels. Have you guys been selling single barrels of the brandy?
No, that was just a request. That was a request from stores buying single barrels who were like, oh, hell no. We were never, ever going to think about brandy, but just let's try it. And then by the end of that, 2 or 3 sips in, they're like, oh, you guys, you idiots. What's wrong with you guys? So, and Nick was always very intentional about showing that way to the right people, because we wanted them to get behind us, not just for whiskey, but to get behind us on this brandy. I mean, it's yet again another example of a distiller, in this case, because we're talking this industry, a distiller doing nothing more than putting out a product that we really hope makes everybody pay attention to the state of Wisconsin and all of our products that are becoming better and better by the day, because nobody's better when just one distillery is better. Nobody's better when one brewery is better, or one farmer is better. We're better when we're all better. And we're putting that out as a choice in brandy. We think it's a great choice. We want to be able to appeal to everybody on all socioeconomic levels and all other demographics, and we think that bars can move it and make money in a case that let's keep the money here. Let's keep it in our home state.
Yeah. So will you stay with the California grapes, or will you eventually move to Wisconsin? Or
we were very, very much hopeful that we could find what we were looking for locally, but we didn't. And that is not meant to say that that is not a comparative statement in the least. Okay, what we're looking for was a white grape varietal that happened to come out of California very seldom in the year. So we're not at liberty to say who for a variety of reasons, but we found, and again, I think if you're focused on putting the best product in the bottle that you can, that was our goal. Okay, and we were very hopeful that we could find that in our backyard. Currently unable to find that to our specs, but right now we just put the best thing that we could in the bottle, and we are really leaning into the fact that we aged it here in Wisconsin. So those are white grapes out of California, aged here in our backyard.
Oh. I don't know, Spencer. Oh, and by the way, Spencer, you did win a set of samples for sharing posts. So you will get a sample set of this as well. But awesome. Is there a chance to find this outside the market, or do you have to find a mule?
Somebody calling me. I know the answer to Spencer's question. Okay. It is not available outside of Wisconsin. Currently, it's a Wisconsin market. The limousine rye is a little more than a dozen markets. The gin is getting into 40 plus different markets between states and countries. But that brandy of ours is in Wisconsin only. Because, if you think about the brandy belt, it really doesn't include Iowa for the most part. But it does include Minnesota. It does include the UP. And in many cases doesn't even wrap itself all the way around Lake Michigan into the mainland of Michigan. It's really those 3 areas, and it's Wisconsin heavy. And until the coup goes through and we just decide to take the UP back, we'll consider that there might be through potential markets in the future. But right now it is a Wisconsin product.
So right now it's kind of like you have to stop in and pick up your spotted cow and your Dancing Goat brandy.
That is what we are hoping for.
Yes.
Yeah. It makes a very Wisconsin Boilermaker.
Hey,
very Wisconsin.
Hey, now might have to try that on the birthday coming up.
There's a store just across the Iowa-Wisconsin border that my understanding is they sell more New Glarus there by volume than any other store. It's because of all the Iowans going over there to go get New Glarus. So if you could stick the Brandy in there too, then you could just have that one, have it and sell the Wisconsin Boilermaker.
It's funny because Bullett's leaning in hard on their Boilermaker idea, and they've reached out. They did a 5-pack, with Lake Louie twice now, and I was blessed enough to be there when they picked a Scotch ale that they did a riff on the Warp Speed Scotch ale, and it was a 5-pack of bottles of beer from Lake Louie, and the slot in the 6-pack holder was for a 375 of Bullet bourbon. So it was that whole notion that there are other people doing that, but right now, I mean, we're friends with the Carries. I'm spending almost all day Saturday in Prairie du Chien, right at the river there, working a market, an event there. But the bottom line is, if we can really kind of show Wisconsin that there are a lot of good brandies. I mean, it's rare that, there are regionality things, there are regional components to the state of Wisconsin, Mike, where, by and large, it's overarching a Korbel state. But then there are bars that are Christian Brothers bars. I've even been into bars that are J. Bavay brandy bars. And there are bars that are rail brandy all day. And it just doesn't matter because I'm in and out, having one quick one, and I'm going home. Yeah. So there's, again, it's for us. This is our take on it. This is our spin. I think we make a lot of great craft brandy in this state. Right now, one of the industry leaders right now is Drink Wisconsinably. They're probably number one. I know Central Standard's probably number two. Wallershem's making killer brandy up there. Tom's a good friend. All those guys are good friends. To be able to add our little product to that list and the short list of other craft producers making brandy in Wisconsin makes us feel real good because like I said before, we're still in the beginning parts of our brandy kind of formation genesis, as is everybody else. So as we move along, we're all going to get better over time.
It's not a bad name, Richard.
The squeaky cheese. Would it be spelled that way, Richard? Squeaky with an IE.
That's actually, you know what? I'd probably attend. But then you have to have the cheese curds that squeak when you bite into them. Otherwise, it'd be a disaster.
There is the fresh, and I, now that we're into cheese curds for just a hot second, we have been blessed with one restaurant that now has 2 locations in Wisconsin that has put us along with a beer batter. We're a whiskey beer batter at the distillery, and we move about 8 bottles. 8+ bottles around a week through a deep fat fryer on cheese curds of just limousine rye. So we might have the highest never consumed it in a glass bottles going through the distillery. It's just it's somebody that's fearless in the kitchen that loves to play with the products behind the bar. So we live in a state like that where people are willing to play. I'm not quite sure how Brandy would play against cheese curds in a deep fried cheese curd world, but whiskey certainly punches through.
Yeah, I was gonna say the rye with that with just a little bit of spice there. Oh,
dude, these are the best cheese curds, and they're some of the best cheese curds in Wisconsin.
What was the name of the place again?
It's called The Distillery. They're the ones
Distillery.
in Richfield, and they just put a second location up in Grafton. So
okay.
So they're pretty fearless if they're putting whiskey through a deep fat fryer. pretty impressed with that. And we should be able to tell those stories because that's what makes the industry approachable. It's no more difficult than does it taste good? It doesn't mean it cannot be served on to be served neat, can never add water, can never put it in a cocktail. It's like whatever. Put it in a deep fat fryer. That's fine. If it makes cheese curds taste good. It's awesome.
So with the I'm trying to make sure I don't say something stupid, which is really hard for me. With state liquor laws being what they are around the place, and with other institutions, Could you do something like set up a tent at a Wisconsin football game and have? Would you guys be allowed to do that?
No.
Okay.
It would have to be at a licensed establishment. If there were a bar in, like, you can easily serve liquor at Fiserv Forum during a Bucks game. I forget, Lacrosse Distilling just got a big sponsorship and can serve their spirits up at Lambeau Field.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, again, it's that notion of what's the end goal? Okay. Is it visibility? The beauty is that we come back to the whole notion of liquid to lips. So, us going out to bars and sponsoring it by drinking and buying people cocktails and working to get it on a menu, doing samplings where we can actually pour it into people's glasses. It's the liquid to lips philosophy of that's how we sell a lot of product. It's how beer is sold. It's how spirits are sold for sure. So the answer is yes, if there's an established liquor license within a sporting event. For me to set up a 10 by 10 tent and just start slinging hooch out of Camp Randall, I'd probably be rolled up in a gator really quick, or some cop on horseback. But at the same time, to answer your question even further, Mike, we've been blessed enough to be able to gift bottles of limousine rye this year at the first Badger game to every suite holder. So every suite holder at the Badger men's football game in their suite found a gift of a bottle of limousine rye from us. So
nice.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where where the majority of those people are from the state of Wisconsin. They can find it. It was our first flagship, so we wanted to get that out into people's glasses for sure.
All right.
So I am drinking in an old fashioned.
It looks like the color on that looks great, Fred.
It's just, it's a little frost on the glass. It also looks better because it's a faceted glass. But I love the way that it plays with a big cube. It just it dilutes at the right ratio. I find it never gets watery for me, and it dilutes slow enough, and I tend to drink fast enough to hit that sweet spot right in the middle. So, that's the age-old conundrum: is don't let your cocktail sit on the counter too long.
I agree with that. I like bigger cubes with stuff. I always tend to pour heavier in general as well too when I'm making cocktails. So I like to taste the alcohol in the cocktail rather than just tasting sugars over the alcohol. So
and therein lies the dilemma, I think, in a cocktail like the old fashioned. I mean, first off, you have our old fashioned, which is our Brandy old fashioned, which is the state cocktail. But historically, that old fashioned is not a Brandy cocktail; it's a Wisconsin rip. It's a rye cocktail, So until we started putting out Brandy that I really, really loved, I would drink rye old fashioned soda all day. Mm-hmm. Because the nice thing about rye and now a Brandy that is super, super floral is that it plays really well with bitters. I mean, it just dovetails in nice, and it kind of takes two oppositional components and allows them to dovetail right together and meld really nicely. And then with dilution, everything just kind of settles in. It's really nice it's really nice to be able to offer two different versions. Okay. And next year, our intention is to have a bourbon out in the market in 2023. So we'd have three options. So
what type of bourbon are you talking about?
I cannot say, but we've made and played with a lot. I'm guessing that it'll have some components of grain in it. It could be a high rye bourbon. It could not. But right now, the intention is to have a bourbon, and we've played around a lot with a high rye mash bill. Today, for example, we were cooking 29% rye bourbon, so just on a cook today. So,
and I know you guys have been throwing all sorts of stuff in the mash lately.
Yep,
it's been all sorts of different ryes. I saw a blue corn. I saw all sorts of fun stuff going through there.
Yeah, there was some Bloody Butcher that went through there, some Hopi Blue. Yep. So I mean, it's us trying to to again play. I mean, we've got that rick house now to do some aging and do some intentionality with the terroir and what our climate gives us, and we're blessed to be able to have that and to be able to fill it up, to have projects that we are feeling really good about. And you know, what's the worst that happens? You know, instead of a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, you know, it's a 7 or an 8. Okay, it's still alcohol and it's still pretty damn good. You know, it doesn't mean it's going to get bottled, but it just means that we learned something while we're making it along the way. Okay, and probably we learned, as we all do, you know, how to make it better the next time. So, you know, us playing and us trying to use a lot of the different woods and a lot of the different barrels that we use and the different wood components and the toastings and the char levels is just the really fun artist kind of component to what all of us do in distillation.
Well, and never mind. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Oh, I said what maybe a silly question that you can or cannot answer is have you guys put some of the limousine rye in the brandy barrels?
Dude, we just did a single barrel today. Sold a single barrel to a local consumer that is over the moon by a limousine rye that was finished in a brandy barrel. And it's just one of those, it's a really nice, it gives this really nice baking spice component to our rye whiskey. To me, it's that component of cooking, okay, of allspice, of cinnamon, of a little bit of clove, all those punch through, and just that short period of additional rest in a brandy barrel, which in a really fun, circuitous, weird world held our brandy. So us putting it in there to finish was just phenomenal. I mean, today we were showing, you know, just additional barrels that, you know, that came out of the Solera system, some limousine rye that went back into American white oak, old bourbon barrels that went into French oak, that went into bitters barrels, that went into a brandy barrel. And the brandy one was this 4-store Madison business, 4 different spots. That was their one that they pretty unanimously picked. So, and it's fun. We've sold a few of those because it's really, and particularly for people that are cocktailers. And if you know how to lean in on that, and you know how to be oppositional and complementary in cocktailing, it was one of the best mornings picking people's brains about what they felt they could do with it. So we're super excited to see what that team of mixologists and bartenders does. Plus, they own one nice little tiny liquor store on the east side, so it'll be able to be purchased for full bottle purchase as well.
That's cool. I was gonna say.
So, what? I got one more question. Yeah,
keep going.
I'm
gonna forget them, so just roll.
What? RK, what about? I mean, just because it's a known thing, kind of a very visual thing of the Solera system that you guys have there. What about Solera brandy?
Right now, that has probably been talked about. I haven't been in part of that conversation, but I'll be really honest with you. It's been pretty clear that we've discussed for a period of time now. This is the original Solera, and us rebuilding that one, there'll come a point in time in the future where we'll have to redo what we have now, where those barrels will need to be either retooled or repurposed or rebuilt, or built over again with new barrels. But then we're also talking about, because the Solera that we have is 4x4, plumbed vertically, 2 different versions of French oak, but very atypical, non-traditional Solera system.
Yeah.
It's not a cascade, gravity drop.
Yep.
So we've talked about building a diamond one, and that could certainly hold brandy. The problem with it's not a problem. Again, the more we do, the more we have to explain to consumers what we're doing. Okay. Right now, we're just, I think, hitting pretty clearly for our typical consumer base, particularly in Wisconsin, that the only thing that goes through the Solera they're finally starting to understand is limousine rye. The bourbons that we've sold, other things that we've sold, don't go through the French oak Solera system, don't, in many cases, don't hit French oak, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, it's, again, how innovative can you be, but yet not muddy the waters for the consumer so that it's still understandable, approachable, and accessible. I think at the same time, I hear a lot that, oh, I don't like finished whiskey. Okay. I don't. It's an option that we're providing. We make a lot of other whiskey that is not finished. So, the word angel's envy gets thrown around a lot in conversations when I'm out in the market. You guys are the angel's envy guys. And I'm like, certainly not that big. Certainly not selling that level of stuff.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, if that's what they know for finished whiskey and we can cross-purpose what we already have in brandy barrels, why not? And then to taste it after 3 to 4 to 5 months, it's just sublime, and to be able to offer that to consumers makes us feel really good.
And that was going to be my question, was how long are you guys letting it sit in there? Because I wouldn't think even 5, I'm surprised maybe that long. I get it depending upon how it pulls out, but anything over that, like 5 or 6 with brandy, I think I would impart a lot to it. So I'm kind of impressed, but sometimes I might even thought of weeks. I thought maybe like a month or 2 even with some of that stuff.
I think you can get away with really small barrels in a short period of time, as we've all seen in craft distillation. And now you're starting to see more and more people evolve back into the 53s. But that whole 3 to 6 month is also in many cases indicative of us because we proof down in the barrel. Okay. Yeah. So we're adding a pound of water a week maybe. Okay. Which is a minuscule amount. But we're trying to keep those exothermic temperature reactions either negated or minimalized so that we're not throwing off flavors that are coming from the heat that's being displaced now because we just dumped a bunch of water in. And a lot of people will take it out of the barrel and then proof down. We're proofing down in the barrel. So for us, 3 to 6 months might be very, very different in an outcome to what somebody else is getting at 3 months if they're putting in the 3 months, but they're proofing down somewhere else.
Well, and I love how you guys are keeping track of that on the barrel as you're doing it. It's not on Tuesday we do this. It's this barrel got this on this date, and then we go back later. No, and then here it hits it again.
And this guy signs it. It's kind of like the bathroom at Quick Trip, everybody looks at it for an hour and somebody has to initial it. It's probably not the best analogy, but it's certainly a visual because the paper looks the same. It's a date and it's a poundage and it's did I do this and what's my name? But it's that attention to detail that is crucial in putting out a good product. Okay, it's
consistent.
It's how you get consistency. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, people say you can make this in one day and you can bottle it the next day. You can make this. Sure, you can, absolutely do that. But the word that's missing in that sentence is it good? You can make a product. Is it a good gin? Is it a good vodka?
That's what we've had absinthe before where it was like, oh, here's an absinthe. And it's like, oh yeah, it looks like that today. 3 months later on the shelf, you're like,
oh yeah,
what the hell happened?
Yep, absolutely. There's things that throw off, which is the and then you start to see some of the things that get done to minimize that in packaging. Wrapped bottles that you can't really see.
Really,
it's truth in
really
advertising.
Dark green.
Yeah. Well, it's like, come on, guys. I mean, put out a good product, stand behind it, and let it show. I what I like, there's only products that's actually even in a wrapped bottle, and it was a product that we got, when we acquired Death's Door. It's the Wonderment Schnapps, which is a clear product. It's in a gorgeous kind of an old 1800s prescription pharmacy labeled bottle, but it's a green wrapped bottle.
It's cool looking.
And it's always kind of confusing to consumers because they think peppermint schnapps, well, this is going to be green. It's like, well, it's not cream de menthe with green food coloring. I don't know. Sometimes I think we as consumers are so lacking in knowledge sometimes, but provide something where you don't have to answer a lot of, or where it doesn't take a lot of questions being asked for people to pick it up and take it to the register. And then the other thing too, I mean, we've talked about this on this, I do not believe the first time I was interviewed by you guys that this was at all the prevailing sentiment of craft distilling, but today it is, and we've gotten there. It used to be that local was absolutely important. Now it's only important if it's good first. Then if it's local, it's icing on the cake. The days of it being, I buy this because it's local and I support my hometown, you have to be good first, and people will pick up a second bottle then.
Yeah.
Well, and that even goes along something I think we talked about years ago too. Is I was expecting there to be a drop off in the craft distilling expansion, even before COVID. I was like, this, you can't just keep going in this rate, exponentially, kind of like the way breweries did, just because of territory and such, and then it becomes much more localized. I've been surprised by how everyone got through COVID. People who did survive, because we thought there was up to be at least 33 to maybe 50% that didn't make it at one point. And there seems to be a continued expansion. Almost nonstop with distilleries and stuff. So
well, we figured out decades ago that alcohol was recession proof. Okay. And it's fascinating if you look at the research. It's fascinating if you look at the research, because it's very, very telling, because consumers have a perception that during a recession they spend less money, and they do, but they spend it more often. So they move down typically a tier in beer, for example. So from that craft beer, they might go back to a high-end large regional brewery, okay, which is $2, maybe $4 a six-pack less. So in their mind, they're saving money, but they buy an extra six-pack every month. Okay, because it's a recession. So their spend is almost equal, but it's just that they moved around in tiers. The same thing happens in craft distilling in recession, but we also found out that we're reasonably pandemic proof. I mean, it wasn't easy to get through when the government shut us down and said, don't be around, don't do that. And if you don't have, a denatured alcohol permit, please don't make hand sanitizer. And then 36 hours later, they changed that rule federally and said, doesn't matter. We don't care anymore. We talked about it over beers last night at the Hilton Inn. Whatever.
I don't think that's far off. If you want to be
that's far off.
No, I don't think so either, because we've got some. Well, even I'll call them sanitary wipes is not the proper term, but a wipe to wipe things clean. Several packages of them that we got at work, and I opened it up and I'm like, this is neutral grain spirit. Yep. This is new make right off of there. And I had somebody else smell it and they're like, why does it smell so weird? I'm like, no, this is not. It's like, this is one where they ran through with what they've got. And I've saved a couple packages, and one of these days I might suck on one of those because I am 99% sure that it is absolutely just neutral grain spirit. That's it.
Well, it's funny because we did hand sanitizer at the very beginning of COVID, the way a lot of people did hand sanitizer, but we, by and large, we're not putting it out for public purchase in 12 and 16 ounce pump bottles. We were giving it away primarily. It was for first responders, nursing homes, hospitals, but it was in 5-gallon buckets, okay, with pumps. So that's where most of ours went. But then we had this really kind of interesting idea that let's just kind of lean in hard on that kind of barbecue wet nap. You go to a barbecue and you get the wet nap to wipe your hands off. So we did a lot of those sanitizing wipes with our distillate. But the best part was going this past fall to, I don't even know what the Milwaukee Brewers Stadium is called. I'm going to call it County Stadium. Okay. It's where the Brewers play. I think it's some insurance company, but we're not going to give them a plug tonight. So we had taken all the Miller Lite that did not make it to that first homestand and distilled it and went back into hand sanitizer. And it turned out that I'm doing an event with the team, and we're in the atrium for a big high class event with hand sanitizer wipes that had Miller Lite that came from downstairs, distilled it, packaged it, brought it right back to its home. So, I mean, it was just people are like, this is Miller Lite that didn't make it to the homestand? How did that happen? Because that we would have shut down in March. I'm like, when did you think the Miller Lite was made that would have been in the first homestand in April? It wasn't made April 1st. Yeah. It was made in February or March, and it was gonna be out of its best by date. So we did 150,000 gallons plus of hand sanitizer, beer that went into hand sanitizer. And it's just one of those cool kind of things. We did divert a couple little projects. We definitely know what Leinenkugel's Summer Shandy tastes like once it's distilled.
Yes, we
And
do.
it's awesome.
It is. It's a really good moonshine, man. It is.
It's like lemon meringue, baby.
It's
Oh,
it's impressive.
Because it's not the lemon meringue pie portion, it's the meringue portion.
Yeah.
Okay. Where you get that bleed through the baking on those sugars. And it's just fantastic. We refer to a couple of the products in our portfolio as stupid good. And this is one of those that's stupid good. It's only for sale at the distillery. So, but I mean, it just kind of complements, but it also goes to show that, it's not irreverence. It's just us having fun in the industry that we're all blessed to work in. But I'm interested in hearing more. I mean, we drink, we don't just drink brandy old fashions. Patrick, we're a brandy slush, Brandy Alexander state.
That's what I was gonna say. A brandy slush Alexander is like a very Christmassy thing that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, my family doesn't drink very often as a group. I was like,
Okay.
My mom and dad did, so everyone else is kind of like one or two very light. I had mixed two pails of that they disappeared rather quickly, and I noticed quite quickly that I was like, hey, everyone has a little buzz on today, and I'm like, it's not just like a little. I was like, yeah, you guys aren't driving home for a minute, like,
yep,
you hit them. I'm like, but no one was out of range or anything, but everyone kind of had that like extra a little bump to them that evening in that card game that day.
Well, it's that great notion of, brandy is something that we all tend to understand. Okay. We understand that in Wisconsin, I would theorize we understand brandy better than we understand whiskey in the state of Wisconsin because we drink more of it, as a state. It's easier to have a conversation around brandy Alexanders in many cases, or a brandy slush or a brandy old fashioned than it is to explain to people that the old fashioned is a historically rye drink. It came out of the East Coast and it's kind of changed for a variety of different reasons. One of which was, the reaction to coming out of Prohibition and, bad whiskey that had been adulterated. There was a glut of brandy at a certain point in time, and Wisconsin got a fair amount of it. So, there's a lot of theories as to why, why Wisconsin became a brandy state. You hear a lot of things about, the World Expo, the Columbian Expo, the whole 9 yards. That doesn't seem to really pan out. But what does pan out is it seems like there was a whole bunch of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of cases of aged brandy that were accessible and available very quickly, and they hit Wisconsin sooner than they hit other places. So we just started to drink. It was drink worse whiskey or better brandy, and Wisconsin chose the accessible, cases of better brandy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, that's, but again, it's a price point thing. It's something that, if you're going to have 20 guests over, you can batch a bunch of brandy old fashions and, or put the fixings out so people can style them up the way they want. Mike, one of the great things is going into a Wisconsin bar on a Friday. Okay. And you can gauge how big of a brandy old fashioned bar they are by what we would call their preset station. There are bars where they pre-make and they might have muddled and they might have the fruit and the sugar already in the glass, and you'll see 6 glasses at a station just ready to be picked up and rot. But there are places then that you see 48, okay, and they're already pre-staged because they know they're going through them before 5 p.m.
Well, when the Old Fashioned in Madison isn't it like National Old Fashioned Day? They like crank through them. Like they're working their way towards their 2 billion.
They just sold their 1 millionth this
1
past
million.
week.
Yeah,
they sold their 1 millionth, and I mean, on their Old Fashioned Day at the Old Fashioned, there are bartenders that don't move out of their spot on the bar, and they have basically 8 glasses wide, and they make 8 at a time, push them, 8 at a time, push them, and that's what they do. I mean, if you did that every day, it'd be carpal tunnel very quickly. But they bring in a lot of top talent that helps them to get through that day. But honestly, Jen at the Old Fashioned and anybody that works there, when you move that much Korbel through your bar, you can call up on a Thursday and say, hey, I'd like Mr. Distiller guy to come out here tomorrow. And it's not a big ask. It's because you're a really important.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Well, I don't know what.
Well, here we are. We finally got rid of those two. I don't know what the hell's going on.
You get lost? I got lost.
I don't know. You dropped, and then Patrick is going, "Hey, I don't," and then he dropped. So
There we go. So to finish that,
Whoa.
I believe it's still true that the Old Fashioned in Madison is the #1 on-premise Korbel account in the country. That wouldn't surprise me in the least. So, but at the same time, they're a place where you can go in and ask for other brandies too. Okay,
Yep.
your house is going to get Korbel, and that's not always the case in a lot of bars in Wisconsin. If you ask for a brandy Old Fashioned, a lot of times in certain places you're going to get a rail. Okay, so your call is Korbel. Okay, instead of, hey, I'd like Dancing Goat Brandy, I'd like Wallersheim's Press House, I'd like Central Standards, all those. So that to me is where we can make a little bit of hay, because if you're priced at the right point, the beautiful part is for $1 more, you can get a Wisconsin version with a Wisconsin distillate, or in our case, a product that was aged in Wisconsin. But at the same time, I mean, we're in a $3 Old Fashioned at a number of rural taverns in Dane County.
God.
And they're still making decent margins. A $3 Old Fashioned for happy hour on Fridays is still making margins. So, when you're priced a certain way, it's amazing the attention you can get in a $3 special. He's not wrong. That Richard is not wrong. It makes a great eggnog variation. And I mean, if you think about eggnog, it's usually brandy and rum that goes right into that gorgeous wintry hot drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I would throw ours in there all day because it's 86 proof and it would punch through in a hot cocktail even more so than it would in a cold drink. So,
I'll let Kevin brag on you for a minute here. It's all good. It's all good to show you love it, and
there we
and
go.
we
Thank
agree.
you. I appreciate that, Kevin. We appreciate you having you out, and we're honored that you invited us onto the show and came out to see our little place.
I do. There's a follow up to that, which I was going to bring this up later.
Mm-hmm.
So, related, Distill America 2023.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any dates yet?
Right now, we're looking at, and I'm going to look it up because I forget the exact date. Venues have not been dialed in yet, but we did pencil in a date, and that date is May 20th.
Okay.
So
Sweet.
we're still looking at a couple different places. It was at the East Side Club last year outside.
Mm-hmm.
We have been approached by another pretty decent downtown outdoor venue that does a lot of spirits events. The dilemma with outside is you always have to figure out your cost to do business by tenting and your infrastructure costs. Couple venues have more inside options than others.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's always a concern. I always tell people that, Wisconsinites are pretty hardy folk, as are most Midwesterners. So, when somebody says, what do you do when it rains? Our answer is typically get our ass wet. And it's, if I want to be out there, I can still be under a tent, but I've got a raincoat. I'll pack it and I'll be just fine. It's a few hours of getting a little wet. I'm still going to be with my friends. I'm still going to sample spirits. So I think sometimes we overthink the venue a little bit too much. Our problem in Madison is that there's no next. I'll back up a whole nother step. Madison is not necessarily ready to be inside in a ballroom, elbow to elbow in a whiskey event like we did 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I would be hard pressed, I think, to even make money to donate to local charities and to make my money back, and not even be able to give money to the Wisconsin Distillers Guild, which is our named benefactor. So you start to move outside, and then the options open up a little bit. So, and then you can look at, and you can only put on, spirits events at so many places. There's only, Madison doesn't have that gap between a venue, a next step venue from a hotel ballroom. So
yeah, I was going to say there's a big gap from there. Same thing with Green Bay, and it even happens earlier. Earlier in that stage, it's either this or it's nothing.
Well, it is, and it's we feel really blessed that Distill America to be the industry leader in the state of Wisconsin, and I would consider it in the country, because we're only second to ADI in craft beverage opportunities in events. For what's going on over there? What's going on there?
I must have kicked over a bottle. I didn't realize down there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, but no, I think that whole notion of us being the industry leader has allowed a couple of other. There's one this Saturday in the Shepherd Express is putting on a Wisconsin whiskey event, which is, I think,
Mhm.
6 of us distillers, but it's really focused in on whiskey produced by Wisconsin producers. And it's a $30 ticket. Okay. So it's very
Yeah,
accessible, and you're
that's
going to go back and try things multiple times because you're going to start to really be able to, winnow down. You're in one lane of the highway instead of on the Autobahn, drinking vodka and Mung Rice whiskey and, gins and, everything. So, and then, Zach put on his event over in Milwaukee just about 3 months ago. So I think, if we all just kind of are cognizant and we start to, people just don't, we're also not traveling the way we used to travel. So it's hard to get people from Chicago to come up here for Distill America. They've got their own events. It's tough to get people down in the pandemic from Green Bay, et cetera, et cetera. So we feel blessed that people will still come.
no. I still think it's something that people should travel to. And like you were mentioning this one just recently. Sorry, I don't want to get the names confused because one's Wisconsin Whiskey Fest and one's whatever. The other version of the wording of it.
Right.
But even if there's only just 6 for $30, that's basically, that would be like walking up to one person's tent and trying whatever their product was there if you were going to a bar.
Absolutely.
So that's a wonderful ticket, even just to try even if you just had 3 or 4 people thinking that's $10 a brand. That's absolutely fantastic.
Well, just think what it does for your comfort level when you're strolling liquor store aisles the next time. It's no longer I don't really have a lot of information about all these products on the shelf. Now you've actually tried them. You've talked to the distilleries. You've talked to the brand ambassadors. You've talked to the owners, and you've got better knowledge. Plus, you've tasted it more. Most importantly, you're a much better consumer at that point. Because we've talked about it on this podcast. We have talked about nobody should ever tell you how to drink. Okay, if there's only one rule, the one rule is maybe try it the way somebody intentionally put it in the bottle. Then there are really no rules, and there's not a distiller in the world really that at an event is going to look at you sideways if you take a sip or two, pour it in the dump bucket, move on. Nobody's going to tick you for that, and nobody's going to tick you if you give them open and honest feedback. We all want the open and honest feedback, every single one of us producers.
Well, that's what I found the most exciting at some of those things is when you do get into a discussion like that. Now, I'm not saying have one of those when someone's 30 people deep, but there are points with even those tables that it kind of thins out, and you can have a discussion like that with someone. And there are a lot of people that, even if you're not, I like this and this, but you say you found a flaw in it. Like I don't like this one baking spice note, and it's personal preference as you're talking. Like, but this here that kind of hit me wrong. You'd be more surprised than not how often the person who gives honest feedback is the person that the distiller or person there wants to talk to more.
Oh, absolutely. I want to know what you think about it. I want to know what your opinion is. I want to drill down deeper. I want it both good and I want it to be open and honest. And I want you to feel like you can talk to me like we're just sitting on 2 different bar stools. Okay. For example, today I'm in an account and I ordered a limousine rye with my sandwich and at an account. And I hear from 3 bar stools down, that shit's not as good as Bullet Rye.
Okay.
I don't think he saw this on my coat because he was sitting to my other side, but the bartender just looked at him like, and I'm like, no, I want to know more about that. Tell me. And he couldn't. Okay. It was just his preference. He had stopped at Bullet Rye, and we're very clearly not Bullet Rye. And that's okay. The bottom line is I'm like, dude, I will buy you a sample right now, and I'll buy you a sample, and I'm talking a half ounce, ounce, whatever you want to do, side by side with the Bullet Rye, and we can talk right through it. He just didn't want to. But at some point in time, he lives in the town that we produce in. I want him to be proud of what we're doing down the street. I want to change that narrative. I don't want him feeling like he doesn't get us, or he doesn't have to like us, but he should be proud of us. For example, Matt Kenseth is the NASCAR guy from Cambridge. You don't have to be the Nat Kitten. You could be a Dale Earnhardt guy and still appreciate Matt Kenseth because you live in Cambridge. Doesn't mean that he's your race car driver, Besides, everybody from Wisconsin should really pay homage to Dick Trickle for the rest of time eternal. Because he's Dick Trickle.
That's right. There's only one.
There is only one. But yeah, I mean, it's that notion of, I think some of the best conversations are when people feel that they're being heard, listened to, and I don't think people are expecting you to change your product. I think they just want, in many cases, they want a little more knowledge, but they also want to be heard. So, and a lot of times what I'm hearing is price point, but I'm not hearing that on brandy. I'll be really honest with you. A lot of times I'm hearing price point on whiskeys and other things. So,
I'm sorry. I'm just, and it's my experience, limo is pretty reasonably priced.
It is
comparatively. So
it's very reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I agree. But it's that age old conundrum of, you said it in earlier, Patrick, when you said that you're going to get your money's worth on a $30 event. There are many events that are $75 or $150 that you're going to get your money's worth.
Mm-hmm.
But the step before that is you have to have $75 or $150 to even get your money's worth.
Right.
So you have to be able to kick that out and not miss it because you didn't use it to pay the bills. It has to be excess money. So I think sometimes, and I'm super impressed because the range on this brandy right now, it's ranges from $16.99 in large retailers that sit on the state minimum 6% markup, and I think the most I've ever seen it is $22.99. So right in there, there's a spot that I think people can find this brandy at their, and not just at their price point, but feel really good about it being a Wisconsin product.
That's a damn good price point.
It's ridiculously good.
And I mean, not being up there, not having to experience all the culture as everyone else, that I would think that would be an easy sell for people if they tried it and they're like, wait a minute. Oh, and it's done by a Wisconsin place, a Wisconsin distillery. I would think that would be a pretty easy sell. But I mean, we all know that for a lot of people, and I will say Midwesterners, it seems that price comes first, which there's a reason why they sell a shit ton of Black Velvet in Iowa, because the farmers like the Black Velvet and Coke.
Yep.
And, and quite honestly, there's not a damn thing wrong with Black Velvet and Sprite. However, it's still Black Velvet. But they're going to buy it because you can buy a case of it for nothing. You're not going to run out. But yeah, that's just a super good price point, I think.
Well, at the same time, it's funny because I used to think everybody shopped basically the way I shop a liquor store, and I'm the absolute worst. I'm at one end of the bell curve. Okay, I can go into a liquor store that I shop twice a month, and I still spend 45 minutes in the damn store, and I know where everything is because I'm just looking. But there are people. If I'm doing a sampling, I watch and hey, can I get you a sample of something? I'm good. Right to that bottle. Their time in the store is 90 seconds. Yep. They pick up what they pick up because they always pick it up, and it could be Spotted Cow, it could be J. Bavay, it could be Christian Brothers. Okay, hell, it could be Kessler. But the bottom line is they walk out with it because that's what I buy. This is my stuff. I just want. There'll come a point in time when people will slow down. I hope a little bit, and they'll start to hear a little bit of this. Hey, these guys are kind of in the game. They're sitting at a price point that's not too far north of what you're talking about already. So, and it's that notion that we just want to be in that conversation with all of our brothers in Wisconsin spirit. So.
Well, and I think flavor wise, what you're getting, I think you're above that price point.
Oh, I would argue that all day.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm like clearly above that, where we were you could easily put this compared to some other things I've had into that other 40, 50-ish range without blinking an eye if you wanted to. So that's why I kind of sorry. I had that little rocky image when you first told me about it. And then I had it, and I was like, "Oh, there's a puncher's chance. Yeah, you might take the legs. You might take the legs out of them at some point. Just wobble them a bit."
Well, if we're grabbing a little bit of Korbel, okay, that's a whole different thing than grabbing a very little bit of that $35 craft brandy market, okay? Because the joke that I say a lot of times, and I hope people hear it as a joke, and it's me being a little bit irreverent, me being a little bit silly, but mostly just trying to be instructive. And it's that I always say that there's 17 people in Dane County that drink $35 craft brandy, okay, and they've already picked their brands, okay. So let's not. That's a hard market to break into. I would argue, breaking into the vodka market's a hard game to break into because people have already stopped in vodka. And I think in craft brandy, the people that were in early in those $35 gorgeous products that we both put out around the country, as well as in this state, I will always have bottles of Cocard brandy at my house. Okay, there are $35 craft brandies in my house that I will fight for tooth and nail. But that's not the market we're going for because there's not a lot of that market out there. You know, I think the largest on-premise account for Copper and Kings is a bar in Madison.
Yep.
So,
I remember.
You know, and it's because somebody worked really hard to make that on the cocktail menu. So, but at the same time, it's really, you know, you start to talk $35, you start to talk 16. It's a different price point.
It is.
It's hard to sell a $12. It's hard to sell a $12 old fashioned, okay, in Fond du Lac. Yep. It's really hard to sell a $12 old fashioned at Fond du Lac. And Fond du Lac drinks a lot of old fashions. So, you know, it's better to not be $3 all the time. It's better maybe not to be $12 all the time, and better to be closer to what people are spending already than to be asking people to make a $2 to $4 a drink jump.
Yeah. It's easier on your mind when you're doing it and you feel like you're getting a superior product.
Right. And our whole thing is, you know, drink less, drink better. You know, and that should be eat less, eat better. That should be our entire mantra as Americans. You know, let's eat a little closer to where we live. You know, let's drink a little closer to where we live. You know?
You're in the wrong part of the country for that. The Golden Corral would like to have a word with you, Fred.
The Golden Corral. The one Ponderosa that's left in Wisconsin is very upset right now.
Yeah.
So, but no, I think it's that whole notion of, you know, if we know our farmers and that we know what they're producing in our neighborhoods and in our counties, in our states, and we know our brewers and we know our, you know, cheesemakers and we know our distillers and we know, you know, people that grow our crops and have our proteins, we're just better off. Okay. We're better off as a society. We're better off as an environment. I think we're going to be better off as people. I think our bodies will feel better about some of the things. You know, it's don't modify it too much. Don't over process it, and try to keep it as local as possible. So that makes it. I'd be the world's shittiest marketing person because, you know, I have like 1,000 words on a label because I never once got to the point.
All right, I know we have you here over an hour, but it's a fair question. Brandy versus bourbon versus rye. And Mike, too, what do you think makes the best old fashioned? Personally. Mike, do you have an opinion?
I mean, honestly, I've had only one or two bourbon old fashions. I don't make old fashions at home. I like them, and I don't make them only for the reasons once I start making them, I'm going to go nuts with it. There's also a reason Patrick asked me before, what'd you do this weekend? Well, I also did my thing I've been avoiding, and I'm like, damn, I'm just going to do it. I'm barrel aging some Manhattans right now. Mm-hmm. So, because I know what'll happen if I start doing the old fashions. I've never had a brandy old fashioned. Mm-hmm. I thought about making one tonight, and then I thought, I should just ask Kevin what his, because he had shared a killer recipe, and I wanted to say he did something spicy in his.
Yep, that was a great recipe. But no, I agree with you. I very, again, I mean, you look at bourbon is also, it's a sweet product. Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, corn is unidimensional in many cases until it's barrel aged. Brandy is a very sweet product. I love a rye old fashioned, and I'll be very political. I love our brandy in an old fashioned. So I am probably 50-50. But if you would have asked me this before, and I'll be really honest, if you would have asked me this before we had a brandy on the market, when I used to say that was not my go-to, I was rye old fashioned soda water all day. And it wasn't a typical rye old fashioned, and I wasn't looking for that massive spice bomb of maybe an old granddad, okay, or an old Overholt, or something that was just a big punch over the head. I was looking for something that was a little more craft. So, but now I'm loving our brandy old fashions, but I like them the way I like them. I don't need to backfill them with syrupy goodness.
I lean if you're making it old fashioned, not the Wisconsin way, I tend to lean more rye. Like if I'm in, for the most part in Wisconsin with the way we do them, like you said, if you don't fill with the extra, if it's just like a press in it or water or something, sometimes where it's not adding extra sweetness to it, I'll lean more brandy here sometimes. But in general, up until more recently, even in Wisconsin, I was more the rye guy,
Right.
ordering
Absolutely.
at a bar.
Mhm.
So I just like that extra spice that kind of kicked through on that edge, depending upon what you used.
Well, I think the old fashioned is starting to become what the mule allowed was Americans to do. The mule, I think, was the first cocktail. I'm pretty sure we've talked about this on the podcast, but the mule was the first one that Americans felt comfortable playing around with, and bartenders, would be like, it doesn't have to be vodka; it can be tequila. Okay, you can do a bourbon mule, and people are like, no, what are you talking about? It's a vodka drink, and I'm like, no, it's not. Make a gin Bloody Mary and tell me that doesn't change the game. And people are like, what are you talking about? That sounds horrible. Well, think about it. It's a savory cocktail. And what's a gin? It's a savory clear spirit. Okay, those botanical are herbs and savory components. In many cases, they might come off as fruity. Okay, but what do we always put in a Bloody Mary? Fruit. So, it's just a spin. It doesn't make it better, but a tequila Bloody Mary is freaking awesome. Okay, as is a gin Bloody Mary, as is a brandy old fashioned, a rye old fashioned. I'm not a big fan of bourbon old fashions. I'll be honest with you. I don't think it plays as well in opposition as, for example, a rye does to that sugary sweetness, or it dovetails as nicely as a well-crafted brandy into to be complementary. So.
Sorry, I was just reading Spencer's going back to the old school. Simple syrup, not a cube. Oh,
Okay.
See, I'm a cube.
Served up, okay. But see now, and Spencer brings up a really good point. I have always said that I think you can really tell the intention, and I'm not sure skill set's the right words that I'm using, that I'm going for here, but you can really tell the level of care that a bartender has and understanding by the way they might muddle fruit. If you're watching somebody they could have a baseball bat in that glass. Okay. That's not the old fashioned that I want, because now you've overexpressed all those oils and the pith and everything, and it's all in that glass. I mean, you're trying to break a little bit of those cell walls on the fruit's exterior, and you're really trying to break up the fruit itself. That's all you're trying to do. Okay. And I would argue that Spencer's correct in simple syrup over a cube, because it goes into dilution. It already goes into suspension quicker. And then served up, sure, if you shake it long enough and get it cold, absolutely, you can serve it up. I like it over ice, but that's just me.
Okay, so I'll ask. You said that there's an official brandy old fashioned recipe.
Mm-hmm.
Is it on the website?
We talked about this. It's been interesting because twice now in the last week, I've had bar owners be very open and honest with me. And they're like, here's what you guys need to know. All of us bar owners steal recipes from you guys, and you don't have any recipes on your website. And he looked at me and he said, and this is a very good bar in Rock County, and he said, I'll tell you right now, half my cocktail menu is from High West because they put recipes on their website. So we talked about it last week, Sean and Bo and I, and we're going to do we're going to update and upgrade our website, and we're going to probably include cocktail recipes.
Okay, but because I have that, I did branch out again. I don't get into cocktails because I know what I'll do, but I have, because I made all the stuff, the elderflower bee's knees. I made a lot of those. Yep. And a lot of the sage advice. And I enjoyed those quite a bit. And I still have quite a bit of elderflower liqueur to go through, so I can make a few more of those. But those were great. I mean, those are absolutely great, and I was really glad to try those, because those were not something I would come up with by any means as far as that. But man, the flavors and everything off those were great. So my anticipation of the official Dancing Goat brandy old fashioned is probably high.
Well, the one thing that ours does, and to Spencer's point, is that it flips and does barrel aged syrup. is in there to give it a little more depth. It gives it more base notes, kind of gives it a creamier metal. And it also speaks to what kind of our ethos is and our backstory. So our sugar component is very much a sugar component that we have. It's not cane sugar from, the equator or anything like that. So, I just don't know the proportions, and I don't want to just start riffing out loud unless it's right in front of me. So at the same time, that elderflower liqueur, my friend, pairs very well with Malort. In a little cocktail called the Hard Sell.
Okay.
I will tell you unequivocally, you could pass that goofy cocktail across the bar because it's 1-1-1-1-1, and it tastes just like a grapefruit soda. So Google Hard Sell and
Hard Sell.
The Hard Sell, Malort, fresh lemon juice, elderflower, and I forget what the fourth one is. But it's just one of those things that just covers up Malort, because for me, Malort comes across as grapefruit, particularly grapefruit.
Yes, salty grapefruit.
Yeah. So, and my wife would say, well, you didn't go far enough because you didn't say run through teenage boys' socks.
Well, we did do some tasting on. I don't hate Malort. And as I say with Malort, it's for the people that don't like it. It's not the taste; it's the aftertaste. That's the problem. Yep. But what we found is, somebody we picked up at Distill America, the Natural Spirits Cantaloupe Cream Liqueur.
Yes,
kills Malort. If you drink
Malort,
no, drink Malort, and then had that cantaloupe cream, totally killed it, 100% gone. So we had a standard thing going. All that we were saying, will Natural Spirits kill this? So we were trying like Brimstone and all this other stuff.
It killed Brimstone.
It kills everything. But Malort, it killed Malort.
That is wild. Now you guys have had Schlapper on, Dave Schlapper.
Yeah,
he's been on.
Yeah,
yep.
He's got the new distillery up and running.
Yes, he does. I was going to say it's in Sun Prairie. I was going to say it's up and moving now.
He is. He's one of those great guys in the industry. I really like Dave a lot. And just as an FYI, I don't know where this product is going to go in the future, but bottling the second round of the hibiscus liqueur, the limo barrel aged hibiscus liqueur, will be back out on the shelves probably. If it's not out this week, it'll be out early December. So
very cool. Something to get before Christmas. If you haven't had that, it's a really, really unique take on it.
Yep. That might kill Malort. Shot of hibiscus liqueur, rye aged hibiscus liqueur.
But we can try
to find out.
That's right. That's awesome.
But I didn't realize how late it was. We've had you on for about an hour and a half, and we appreciate every time you come on here and spend time with us, Fred. We always have a wonderful time, and no matter what you're involved in, what you're talking about and what you're representing is always top notch.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's really good to be able to tell the story of the Moss family and what we're trying to do in the industry, and let people be guided by their palates. And we're just out there trying to give people options, put out the best products that makes Wisconsin super proud. Personally, I'm trying to put on events in Madison for the populace that makes us proud, to say that these are really good, spirits events. And, if Madison gets known for great restaurants, great bars, great cocktails, great beer, great spirits, and great events around those things, there are worse things your town could be known for.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wait. Yeah. And Adina did make a Merlot cocktail that was actually...
Yeah,
it was really good, and because it was on a goofy day. It was on International Alan Bishop Day, so it was a little bit of a joke. It had cheesy poofs in it, and it was actually really good.
That is wild.
I'll have to look it up, but it was actually a really good cocktail.
Yeah. So the hard sell.
The hard sell.
The hard sell is 1 part Malort, 1 part gin, 1 part elderflower, 1 part lemon juice.
Lemon juice was the other side. Okay.
And gin.
And gin.
And I would be predisposed to Death's Door gin in that, because I think it makes it doesn't get in the way with all that juniper. I think the juniper in a really London dry gin doesn't play as well or as nicely with the Malort.
Oh God, can you imagine? So
no.
Well, prior to Death's Door gin, where you made us like gin, the gins that I had been exposed to, I could only imagine pairing one of those overly botanical gins with Malort. My God, it's like, yeah, here, have some Ipecac while you're at it. Just
Oh my God. And it's funny because now I don't know why, but during the pandemic, I started to do a deep dive into like home remedies. What have we always used for like the last 100 years? What have people used spirits for? What have they done? And I found a crazy cough syrup recipe, which was just ridiculous. It was, the candy canes that are wrapped individually in canes. They're about, they're about that big.
Yeah.
You take a small mason jar, you crush those up in your hand, you fill the mason jar up with that candy, and then all you do is you add a little bit of, you add a lot of rye whiskey, and then you to fill at the very end. But it's like an ounce of lemon juice and an ounce of simple. And because the red food coloring in those candy canes comes through, and it all dissolves in about a day, I don't know that I would drink cough syrup like on the bus with flask, but it's just instructive as to what we used to do with kids. I mean, we always heard, a lot of times mothers, back at a certain point, many of our grandmothers were prescribed dark beer so that their milk would come in after childbirth. For a cough, we used to give people a quarter teaspoon of brandy when kids were teething. There were all these, and they're not just doctored up bullshit. There is an element of it made sense back then as we were figuring out pharmaceuticals and psychopharmaceuticals to be able to and my wife's like, God, what the hell is this on the counter now? What is this shit?
This is what we're using to fix your cold.
That's right.
It's cough syrup.
Cough syrup. I had people over, and I did too, Mike. I have a barrel aged. I call it the Mini Manhattan Project in my kitchen right now, and it's a 5-liter barrel, and I love a 5-liter barrel cocktail because it usually starts with 8 bottles whiskey. But there's that, and then the infinity bottle that we've been playing around with all the leftovers of single barrels from the Goat, and then goofy ass limo rye cough syrup. So, there's just a lot of, there's a lot of fun stuff that we can do in the industry without taking ourselves too seriously.
That's the other fun stuff. That's fantastic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, Fred, I think we're gonna let you go.
No, that's fine.
I know it's getting late, but we love talking to you. Now I know Kevin on Bourbon Turntable. I believe your show is coming out on Wednesday that you filmed with them.
Oh, nice. Is it this Wednesday?
This Wednesday. I had no idea. He put it in the chat earlier. So make sure you guys stop over there on Wednesday and check out that interview with him. I'm intrigued about the music, but I'm going to wait to see that before we discuss it. I don't want to ruin anything.
Yep.
So we'll hold out there. Make sure you stop that. Mike, you got anything before we take off here?
No, I don't. I mean, as always.
Wait. Stop in next Monday.
Next week too.
Next Monday, stop in and we'll be talking with Robert from Iron Root about their Twin Cities blend that they have. So we'll be discussing that on Monday. After that, it is Paul Nims. He is a chef, and we'll be discussing little sips and snacks for the holiday season.
Perfect.
That's where we're going. So stay on that. Oh, and the 19th is Brandy Bash, where if you've been watching all these shows and you haven't won one already, like Spencer has won one because he paid attention, did what you're supposed to do. There will be other opportunities for that coming up this week. You can try everything we had here, and there's a Laird's 4-year bottled and bond in that as well too. They're a little late in the game. They didn't fit into the month for what we're doing, but they will be on next year, along with Copper and Kings as well too. Because when people were talking rye and other things, this is kind of a subcategory that is a little niche, but we see it as growing a bit. And a lot of times when people start to get introduced to a quality brandy, it really opens up doors, especially even in, like we say, the cocktail category. So,
well, absolutely. Those two that you talked about, I mean, come on. If Copper and Kings isn't in the conversation, first off, I've told dozens of people, if you've got one spot to stop to in Louisville for a tour, just one, go to a brandy distillery called Copper and Kings.
Yep.
That is far and away one of the best tours ever. It's the only time I've ever called a tour guide's boss to actually texted him, said, give her a raise. That's how good it was. And then we all know how to cocktail with Laird's. Laird's Applejack and their overproof stuff. Absolutely.
Yep. So, but thank you, Fred, for coming on. Like we said, we always appreciate it. We look forward to next year and Distill America and everything else going on at that point. And thank you, everyone, for stopping in the chat. We will see you next Monday. Remember, it's not the size of the den, but the love of whiskey. Cheers, everyone.
Awesome. Appreciate everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
What?